I actually didn't have people stand up, but so is there any people here on the software working group? Yeah, we can at least have hands. All right, thank you for being part of the software working group. Acknowledge those people and love them. Our purpose is to make it easy to do rigorous analysis of AIRR data. I am nominating myself as continuing to be the leader of this group. Okay, thank you for that. So our two goals for this year are going to be to finalize a list of summary statistics for use and validation of repertoire simulation tools and finish implementing these summary statistics in software, as well as methods for comparing the collections of these summary statistics. And so that's one thing. And then the second thing is to perform comparison of simulation tools using these summary statistics and write up the results. So this is what we're proposing to do this year.
Oh.
Woohoo!
There was a question.
Oh,
There was a question. Sorry.
It's not a complicated question, but just, I think, right, the original part of software was also the things that you presented about the Docker and workflows. Is that now just off the table, or?
I think that that's important. I think this is a little bit more important, and so we're prioritizing it first. I don't, personally, I don't think I can afford the time to like lead both of those efforts.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like it's got to be organic. Those.
Do you think, I mean, if there's a group of people that want to do that, should a subgroup form, or? I only say this because, I'm VDJ server, and we currently have sort of a provenance of analysis workflow that I'd like to make it better and let other people see if it's useful out of that environment. And, I've had some initial efforts on that. So if other people were interested, then I would like it to see it go forward.
I know William is.
So just to be clear, we did write an initial report on what it would take to put these tools into Docker. And as part of that, I published an implementation of IG Blast in Docker. And subsequently to that, Jason has put the incantation portal suite into Docker, and Partis, of course, is available in Docker. So I think the initiative has moved us to the point where people are starting to do this. The question is how much further we would want to go forward in defining a particular way to put things in such that they can be bolted together in a workflow. And that turned out to be rather a complex thing to look at, because the tools keep changing, people keep coming up with new ones, and among other things, we were concerned that if we came up with some particular statement now saying you should use this tool chain, then in 18 months' time it would be obvious that that was the wrong one. So given that it's fairly simple to implement these things in Docker if you want to anyway, I think perhaps it's, there's a degree of success that people are starting to do that, and we should encourage that rather than put a lot of work into more complex definition.
Thank you, William. But I mean, definitely, I think everyone feels that this is an important way forward. Well, I mean, I'm just not clear, as William says, if it's like time for standards yet. In our working group.
No, I mean,
Yeah, we'll continue to discuss. Are we wait, so have we already voted?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw a lot of yes hands.
Yeah, notes? Questions? Okay. Thanks, everyone.
So maybe we should turn to yay for working, yay for software. I mean, it has the whole point of this is really it's all the working groups it's all the working group over the last year and a half that has made this all work. So maybe we should turn back to the governance is on the agenda. I don't think they're all done. I don't think they've. Yeah, really. I'd like to just go to governance if that's okay. Because I mean, I don't. And then we could take a break, and then people. Because I don't exactly have anything from standards, do I? Do I? Oh, you have something? Oh, okay. Okay, let's do the working groups. Okay. 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 Excellent. So standards is ready to slap something up here. We're using my computer. You could email it to me or. Okay, I think you'll have to check in your computer with Julio. If I think if you can make it work on my computer, that'd be easiest because Julio had to like, if you want to use your computer, he's got to check it into the go-to meeting. Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. My interactions with through in terms of the meeting rooms was really good. So it's too bad that these other things have been happening. Oh yeah, they made a huge amount of money off this. Yeah. Document 3. Okay. So you sent me the link or something? Okay. All right. You just sent me the whole thing. Yeah, 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 yeah. I thought you were going to send me the link somewhere. That's great. That looks okay. That's great. So somebody want to talk to it?
Um, can every, can everyone read this, or do we? I mean, it's actually a PDF, so if you could just open the PDF.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Anybody know how to make this go away all the and yeah.
Okay, so there has been some back and forth about what should be within standards and what not. So finally, this matter has been settled. So basically, minimal standards stays what you know as minimal standards. So we are mainly concerned dealing with data standards, while, as you will find out in a minute, the biologics get their own group. So with this one, we have a change of guard. So from now on, Florian and myself will head the group. As there is, again, no biologics in there, there's actually no true actual need for a true subgroup structure, because everything that we are doing is pretty much related to each other. So the goals that we identified, or the areas that we would like to work on in the over the next year, is what you already heard, and that run under the taglines of MyAir 1.1. Which is then really to promote the practical use of the standard that we published a couple of weeks ago, which runs under this make it known, make it easy, and demonstrate utility. So probably don't have to go through this again. In the end, what we would like to do is help labs to submit their data and show that data deposited in a MyAir compliant fashion can be used for in a metadata analysis that we would like to perform. Nothing big, but simply to show that it works, and publish more or less by the end of this term. So the other area is MyAir 2.0. So that's really the development to meet the needs of that will arise due to new technologies. So this is then mainly dealing with, on the one hand, single cell data or single cell related / clonal data. And so here we will try to develop mechanisms how we can get in metadata describing things like cell populations, reactivities, functional activities of IGs and TCRs, and also linked to structural information. And as a final point, we would like to identify strategies, or some kind of, to get some idea on how to perform analysis of data that is restricted access. So the rough idea is to have standardized aggregation routines that people can run on data sets without having the data sets themselves. This is pretty much an exploration. These similar problems have been solved before, and here the question is how much of that we could adapt to our data types. Okay, so this is what we would like to do. Any? Well, I mean, right now we're minimal because I mean the change. Okay. Yes, I mean, so the change that we wanted to have because was because there was this idea that every standards related endeavor of this community would be grouped under standards. But here, so right now, as there is really no change in what we're doing, I don't see any need for changing the name. Okay. Further questions? Yes. Yes. No, so no addition. So let's put it this way. There is one additional line that was taken out. So if there is a catastrophic failure, as we said it, we will change it. But otherwise, we will try to. So for 1.1 will or has a good chance of ultimately being a dead end. But right now it's the productive thing that we would like to have. And the idea here is so that people can now submit, so that in later case, once we have a new standard, basically all of those data would be pulled down, resubmitted with a new meta field. Yes. So I think standards will always remain a kind of a standing committee. In the end, I think once we have standards that that fit our needs, then there is no need for a working group anymore. What we then would need is one or two people who are simply still there to get input from the larger community, so to identify things that don't work. Yes, but I think so. I think the custodial committee would so because for GLDB, this is or this might most likely be the INFARC, which where we don't have yet settled what kind of real structure this will be and where it really resides. But yes, I mean, in the end, we will have to maintain this thing, but we will not have to maintain it with 10 people, as long as there is no active development. Yeah, Jean? Which one? The identify strategies? Okay, so let's put it this way. This is not about I mean, that's the tag right now. Okay, so whether we would really implement this into MyAir, or whether we would say, okay, so there is another minimal query standard like this. So we are of course also aware that this heavily overlaps with things that Common Repo is doing. But again, so I think as there is some overlap between the data fields that people would like to query and the potential queries, you're right. So it's a reporting standard, and not a query standard. But but that doesn't mean that it could not be split off at a later point. No, that's why it says identify strategy. So it's just something that we think would be worthwhile looking at, because with all the regulations, I think there will always be, especially for human data, be a substantial amount of data sets that is not easily available. And the idea would be if there would be a fast screening mechanism, so that you could simply say, okay, so I have a given script, I let it run on those data sets, I get an aggregate statistics, at least to identify the studies that I might apply for access to. That's the point here. Okay, Eric. They resisted. Sorry? No, formats resisted. They're digging the trenches right now. So no, let's put no. So there was a long back and forth with this. So this is in the end, it's basically about whether we want to have hierarchies and few top-level working groups and a lot of stuff that is beyond that. So I guess everyone in our group is happy if formats is basically a parallel group and we're interacting closely with them. So there is no need to really have them under one control, as long as the information flow is happening. Yes, and they might rename themselves, as we will find out in a minute. Okay, so I mean, I cannot speak for formats, but in the end, all I wanna say is there is a substantial overlap, but I think simply setting up, I mean, what we in reality have to do is set up a regular telco between formats and minimal standards, and for that we don't need to be one working group. So that's all. Yes, but right now, I think formats. Yeah, but honestly, I mean, the thing that has been discussed or that I heard from formats is also not overlapping with standards, because there are some ideas for developments that clearly do not fall into standard territory anymore. So I think that's good. More questions? All right, then we would go for the vote. So who would endorse this proposal for everyone A? Okay, who thinks that this is not good and rejects it? However the reason. Okay, any people who do not want to give a vote? Great, so.
Hey.
Okay, so one last word. So, of course, if you want to be part of this very important endeavor, then write to Florian or me. Thanks. Okay, I'm.
So I should have something from Incarnita. Sorry? Oh, and it's Nina?
Yeah.
Oop, why did that happen? I just had it. What? I don't. Obviously. Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, actually, photos are fine too. That's a picture of my.
Okay. Take her away.
You want me to walk through this? Oops. Good morning, everyone. So Encarnita and I are here to present to you the Biological Reagents Working Group. And let me just. Standard. Right, and we decided to avoid the use of the word standard. Let's see if this works. Okay. So the purpose of this working group would be to provide the AIR community with biological calibrators and reagents for the evaluation of AIR-seq data. And our goals are to first off identify biological calibrators and reagents from the community. So we would have a wide outreach to academic and potential commercial partners who would be interested in sharing reagents with the community. The second goal is to produce and share selected calibrators and reagents. And this is non-trivial, we think. It's something where we would want to have GLP-like conditions to produce these products. We would need to have labs and protocols for production. We may need to have legal agreements with companies for distribution. And then last but not least, we would want to evaluate the products across several different labs. And we would propose to do a survey with B-cell and T-cell samples with calibrators. And we would need to, in collaboration with some of the other working groups, define statistical measures to test the adequacy of these reagents. So just to be clear, the goals are very much focused on creating and validating these calibrators and reagents. It is not about, at this point yet, a comparison of protocols. It's really just about getting reagents and controls and samples that are sort of standardized for the community. So we're trying to make it a rather narrow scope. We think even with this narrow scope, this will be not totally easy to do. So the work products from this would be that we would have validated reagents for sharing with the community. And in the first publication, we would propose to present data from the calibrator validation across multiple labs. The second publication would not happen in all likelihood in the first year, but in a subsequent year or two, we would hope to be at the point where we could generate AIRR compliant data using these validated reagents. And let's see. So now the other thing about this is that I am just here speaking, but I want to make it very clear that the leadership for this group is still completely up in the air. We hope Encarnita will take a leadership role. Others who have expressed an interest are Maggie Bostic from Takara. We are very eager to have Cy Reddy or a representative from his group join us, but that's not yet set in stone. We hope Christian will be with us as well, and Uri Hirschberg has volunteered to help with the data analysis components. And so in terms of if anybody is interested in joining this group, we are actively seeking volunteers and new members since this is a new group. So please, if you're interested, contact Encarnita. Also, if you know of any reagents or things that you think we should be working on, please contact Encarnita about that also. And I think with that, that's it. So
why don't I ask the
okay. But before we do that, it looks like there's some questions. Yeah. Well, 30 more years.
hopefully.
Right. So at this point, the plans that we've laid out here are for the next 1 to 2 years, we think. And then as far as going into the future at this point, I think it's hard to know without a crystal ball, but there are certain, our fields, as you all know, is moving quite rapidly. And I think it's highly likely that there will be different types of experiments for which we will require different controls down the road. And so I think this could go on for a while. Yeah. We don't know yet. Yeah. Got it. Okay, right. So at this point, endpoint is open. Other questions? Anyone have interesting ideas for reagents? Anyone need more coffee?
I
Anya.
was going to make a little comment. This looks like a really ambitious undertaking.
It is.
And I would strongly suggest that you chat with the folks at AdGene just to get some pointers on how they kind of started up, because they also started up just with a couple of people doing things
right
out of their lab, and then actually turned it into a major not-for-profit that now distributes all over the world. So I know Joanne Kamens, who's the executive director there, quite well, and I'd be happy to make that connection. I'm sure that they'd
fantastic.
be happy to help out. But just be careful what you're walking into, because this can explode out and become very big very fast.
I couldn't agree more, and thank you very much for arranging an introduction.
Common repository is ready. Here, I'm going to see. Already send me. Yeah. Okay, so so do you want to address this question?
Well, Yuri's not. Or Scott's here, though. Oh, that's the wrong mouse. Yeah, I'm just trying to find the mouse. Just to review, as all the other groups have done, this is our general mission purpose, to promote and facilitate the creation of common repositories that facilitate open deposit, access, sharing, and reuse of IG and TCR AirSeq data sets. So that's obviously, there's a lot inside of all that, but that's our general mission. So Lindsay and I are both deciding to stay on unless anyone objects to that as co-chairs. Okay, any other objections?
I would say yeah, put the in front of deposition.
Can I send this to you in an email, Danny, and you can send it back? What, facilitate the open? Okay, sorry. I heard like 17 words coming at the same time. All right. Yeah, we can fix this. The grammar is bad, so we'll fix it. I promise. Okay. Lindsay and I will be co-chairs. What's that?
Oh,
38. Yeah. And then our goals for the coming year aren't terribly different than they were last year. At least the theme is not. Yeah. So obviously our sort of big achievement for the year, despite the fact that it sounds sort of lame to say, is that we got recommendation 4 resolved finally. So that's good. So with that out of the way, we want to continue to work on setting up some repositories to lay the groundwork for this idea of a data commons and assess the reality of that and how it will work and function. And this involves more or less the things that are written down on the slide. So trying to figure out ways that there can be crosstalk between the repositories, how we decide whether a repository is compliant, and basically who's going to decide that and how we're going to keep track. And so with that in mind, there's also aspects of this that are starting to overlap considerably with MyAir and also formats. So it has been proposed that this group takes on some or all of the formats initiatives. Lindsay and I aren't necessarily super stoked about that idea in principle, but
yeah. Well, Yuri's not here. To me, it makes sense for formats to exist as a group and for the groups to work together where their missions overlap. It's very simple. So Yuri's not here, unfortunately, but in my opinion, not knowing a lot about what formats is doing, it seems to me that they should probably continue to exist as a group, and the two groups work together where that makes sense, which we've already been doing. The two groups, standards and common repository, work together where it makes sense, like we've already been doing. So,
Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm co-chair on formats, but I've actually not discussed with Yuri. I mean, there was an email chain that went around last night, and there was discussions and so on, but I've not had a chance to talk with Yuri on his opinions, and so I would be hesitant to, you know, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think the groups clearly have different goals, but accomplishing those goals requires some of the same work. So we'll do that part of it together. To me, it
Yeah,
just
I mean,
seems
I'll just say
straightforward.
that the goals of
I'm not sure why it keeps
formats
coming up.
is pretty limited, right? We're really just interested in these technical file formats, and a lot of these other working groups are interested in the concepts and the relationships and so on, and um, you know, so
My feeling is we're trying really hard to find a problem that doesn't actually exist. That's my personal feeling.
I mean, I've chatted with Uri about this, and I mean, he's enthusiastic about continuing the work. I mean, I think this was clear when he was proposing extending the scope of the formats working group to a data modeling and representation working group that interacts with everything else. I feel like we could just go ahead with the idea that that is going to be a working group. If you want me to put the slides back up that he proposed, I mean, I feel like this is his proposal that was part of his presentation. I feel like we can just go ahead and approve it. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and if Scott would be, and perfect, great.
Excellent.
So yeah. So then finally, obviously, we will continue to kind of work on trying to come up with test queries or test cases, if you will. Ultimately, potentially trying to poll the community. That was one of our plans last year. It never really happened for various reasons.
So Corey,
Yeah.
in this goals for the coming year, are you going to propose a specific demonstration project of some kind, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, so I mean, in some sense, VDJ server and iReceptor have already really started on that. I mean, maybe you want to
Yeah,
comment.
I mean, so we've once, and we'll do it again, asked for anyone in the community who has a data set that they want to be a repository that connects into this infrastructure to communicate with us. And then I think our demonstration project is that those repositories demonstrate the ability to execute consistently the 5 queries that we presented on Sunday. That would be our first demonstration project.
You go ahead. So would there be a certain number of data sets that you would like to get from the community? I mean, do you want to try
For
to...
the better.
Right. I mean, so, and should they be in particular subject areas or...
Should we show those queries again? I don't think we need to restrict them to certain subject areas. I don't think we need to restrict to certain subject areas. Personally, maybe others disagree. I don't see where that necessarily helps.
Some of the queries, I think, as they're written, refer to autoimmune disease or HIV or those types of things. But
Yeah, I would argue that diversity would be good so that we could get an understanding of where things
exactly.
are different in different fields so that we get a broader view.
Okay.
So I guess until the API is sufficiently specified that these queries run, and then I guess the future custodial role would be just keeping it current with the kinds of queries that need to be executed as the field progresses.
So one quick comment, in terms of overlaps, I think it was Minimal Standards was talking about the possibility of having a meta-analysis. This is talking about a set of federated data sets. It'd be almost silly to not do the meta-analysis across federated data sets.
And I would think also to make this really useful, to have a big focus on getting data sets, lots and lots of data sets into the system. I mean, I think you guys have already demonstrated some demos of doing CDR3 or junction queries across. I might focus on that as a much more, that would be a thing that would be very useful to the community, to get lots of public data sets all in one place and all accessible.
Exactly.
can do it for 1,200, you might actually get people from industry if you were willing to quote protect their.
We're not protecting,
I
but
don't
we'll
even know
take
what
it if
that
they don't
means.
want to protect it.
or not, you know. I don't know. Can you guys handle like data from what's that place called?
Adaptive. Adaptive.
Yeah, adaptive technology.
Yeah, we have some of it already, actually. Yeah.
Oh, so you do have some of their data. Okay, so great. Let's just call them
You may or may not like
the
that.
dimples, the ball better dimples.
And then I guess there's one other thing actually that we still need to recruit people for. So Adrian Thorogood had been doing work on trying to come up with common consent language that we could all share and use. We're not exactly sure if he's going to continue working on that, but if there are interested people who want to sort of take on that role, it would be good, because I think the group at the moment's a little overwhelmed among the members that are already on it. So if there are people who are interested in consent, please let us know and join the group, because that's still something we want to try to get put together over the next year. And I think that's it. Yeah? Are you guys okay with that? Okay.
I think the comment made before about metadata, I think is really crucial, because when you ask this question, probably it will be perceived differently by different people, depending of the type of data they have, what they are looking for, and so on. And for instance, if you are asking for a full-length IGH sequence, I don't know what it means. Is it with the constant isotype given or not? I do not know. Even in patient, okay, a patient with autoimmune disease, but is it patient with only autoimmune disease, or a patient which has been diagnosed for some? So then you are going in a very deep. And I think the interest of database is that you retrieve some type of data which are not easy found in the normal, say, classical database or classical publication. So I think really, if the metadata are very well defined, then at least we know the delimitation and so on. And I think, given the work done by the group of the metadata and standard, I think built on that, for the correspondence between the E receptor. I think we have done, Brian, a lot of work in that direction only. So at least there is, we know what it is in E receptor, what it is in VDJ server. I think it's fundamental for us. And I think also the problem of querying on disease, there is a lot of confusion in the literature between sequence directly linked to the disease or sequence found in people who have the disease. And so I think this is a big stuff, but I think you should limit, for instance, to say, okay, we focus on specific, or we need to know the specificity of your antibody or something like this. I think it's really the metadata are really the first step, crucial first step.
So with my EU hat on, the stuff that Adrian is working on, is that really trying to work internationally across legislations?
Yeah, I mean, so he uses the Global Alliance for Health. That's kind of. Yeah, so he has been trying to take that into account. I mean, I think that's kind of honestly why things have stalled out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because initially last year we were thinking, oh, well, we can actually put some generic consent forms together that can be shared. But it's not clear that that's actually going to be something that's worthwhile doing, rather trying to come up with a common consent language that people can use. And if that requires, some language to be specific to, different regions, then that might
be. Okay, but so GA4H is basically his primary affiliation.
Sorry, say that again.
So the Global Alliance is Adrian's primary affiliation.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So all in favor of ratification? Any abstentions? Oh. Abstain? Okay. Okay, great.
Einstein didn't vote.
Maybe because you didn't say no yet.
Yeah.
We all know how Steve feels about
Any
this.
Kleinsteins? Oh.
What are you thinking?
I brought I mean, personally, I guess I still think it's a little diffuse, that it needs to be more concrete. And I guess also I still